We are talking about righteousness this week, one of the most important subjects in the Bible. In the book of Hebrews, Paul says something interesting here. In the book of Hebrews, Paul says something interesting here in the 4th verse. He says, "By faith, Abel offered unto God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, by which he obtained a witness that he was righteous, God testifying of his gifts, and by it he being dead yet speaks." Okay, so the important part of that verse at the moment is that Abel was righteous before God because he brought his gift by faith. So what we learned about faith several weeks ago is that this trusting God and resting in God, we deny our own effort, we rest in God, casting ourselves on the mercy of the court, so to speak, and saying, God, of myself, I'm not really qualified, but you have offered to me the opportunity to be qualified. And so when Abel brought his gift to God, he did what God said, the way God told him to do it, and he did it in faith, in trusting in God. And by doing that, this verse says that Abel was righteous. So let's skip over to Matthew chapter 3. It says, "When Jesus came from Galilee to the Jordan, to where John the Baptist was, he came so that he could be baptized. And John said, I shouldn't be baptizing you, you should be baptizing me. And Jesus said, no, we need to do this because this is how we will fulfill righteousness." And if you read that in the Amplified Version, it says, "But Jesus replied to him, Permit it just now, for this is the fitting way for both of us to fulfill all righteousness." That is, to perform completely whatever is right. And so then he permitted him. This is a very interesting verse here because Jesus is saying that in order to be righteous, one of the things that appears to be required is this washing of the body in immersion. People say you don't have to be baptized to be saved, and that's absolutely true. However, part of being righteous, Jesus is explaining here, is this outward demonstration of washing off of the old person, of symbolically going into the water like a dead body goes into the ground. And in the same way as Jesus rose from the dead, then you rise up out of the water. It is a symbolic thing, but it has an application in the spiritual realm. By doing that, you are demonstrating to God, the devil, and all the angels and everybody who has anything to do with it, they are witnessing that you are acting out what's going on the inside. No, it doesn't make something happen on the inside. The inside happens first, and then this outward show. But by that outward show, it's one thing to think something, it's another thing to come right out and say it. And this is an important part of our relationship with God and our relationship with other people, is that, as we know, faith without works is dead. You can have that relationship with God, and it can be one thing. But then to make this outward show by baptism is a completely other thing. And one of the things that we know about that is that there is definitely evidence that something happens, because what you see in other countries especially, but in pagan cultures, they're not happy about it, but they're sort of okay if you keep your faith quiet. But when you come right out and you demonstrate that and show everybody, hey, I have a relationship with God, and I have died and I've risen again in the Spirit. Other cultures and other religions have a real problem with that. It is necessary for us to make these outward demonstrations of our faith. No, the work doesn't make the faith, but because of the faith, we have these works. And if you don't have the fruit, as we've discussed in past weeks, if you don't have that fruit operating in your life, then it's apparent that something hasn't happened on the inside. And so the two go together. There is faith and there is works. There is fruit that demonstrates that your inner man and your inner being, your person, the person deep down, has been changed, or it hasn't. Yes, there are people who are baptized who don't really receive anything in any kind of way that you can see in fruit. But when that action is done from a heart that has been changed, there are things happening that I really believe are powerful that we can't really see on the outside necessarily. I think there are things going on there that are very profound and very significant. Jesus was perfect his whole life. However, he felt like it was important. It was an important demonstration for him to go through this ceremony of being lowered into the water and then being raised from the dead. And it says in verse 16, when Jesus was baptized, he came up out of the water, and the heavens opened, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and lighting on him. And a voice from heaven said, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." Jesus, even though he was perfect, as John said, well, I shouldn't be baptizing you. You should be baptizing me. And Jesus said, no, I have to do this. This is important that I do this. If Jesus, who was perfect, needed to do this, I think we need to do it. But we need to do it understanding that this is more than just a ceremony. It is an outward, as I said before, an outward demonstration to the world and to the devil that I've risen again. I'm different. I've changed. That old person is gone and dead. And Jesus said this is part of being righteous. All right, so with that, I'm going to leave you, and we will come back tomorrow and talk some more about righteousness.
What goes up must come down.